Welcome to Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. What if you could learn from experienced real estate investors, find out what got them to where they are now, get insight into their daily habits, and take these insights to inspire your own growth? Each week, Jonathan Green shares an in-depth look at the mindful approach to real estate investing. Jonathan is a lifelong real estate investor, advisor, and coach, as well as the founder and team leader of Streamlined Properties. Whether you're looking to start from scratch, get to the next level, or just for a straightforward and honest approach to real estate investing, Jonathan seeks to provide a free mentorship program you can take with you anywhere. Now, here's Jonathan.
Are you interested in speeding up the process on new construction? If that's of interest to you, this is a great show for you. And even if that's not your focus, the way that we build is important, and this company and my guest, Damion Lupo, are disrupting the construction industry by modernizing manufacturing. We go into his background in real estate investing as well as building companies, and it all ends here with an adjustment on construction. Let's do this. This is episode 131 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my guest, Damion Lupo. Damion is the Chief Investment Officer of FrameTec. Over the last 30 years, he's owned more than 65 companies, personally purchased over 150 houses in 7 states, apartment complexes, condos, a long history in real estate. Damion, welcome to the show.
Hey, man, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to talk to you and get your background. But first, let's just talk about, I know the company's called FrameTec, but you and I were just talking about this. In general, what are we talking about when we say FrameTec or build tech or con-tech?
You know, we're talking about something that's disrupting tech. It's and I say this sort of tongue in cheek because the technology of construction has really been non-innovative for the last 50 years, with the exception of the nail gun. Like everything is the same. If you look at trusses, if you look at how things are done, not much has changed. It's just kind of like everything is very static. And so we're definitely a disruptor. You know, FinTech is like a financial technology company that's doing something with finance, and we're doing something that's completely disrupting construction.
Yeah, and so this is built on making the process more seamless and easier to get to, quicker, and also turns into more employment on the end for people in the middle. It's not just an AI business.
No, it's actually, there's a lot of humans. We have a ton of automation, but ultimately what we did is we bridged automation and innovated with humans so that we've got this really healthy balance. And it takes, one of the coolest parts that you can almost call it green tech, because we've taken almost all of the waste out of the framing process inside of for a house. And normally you look at a house that's being built or an apartment, there's just dumpster after dumpster of wood. So you're killing trees and then you're throwing them in a landfill. And we have almost none because of our technology that's patented. And so that really does change the game. Not only is it better for the environment, but you think about how much money is saved, which we pass along to the people that are getting the product. And we're 80% faster. So instead of like a 2-week or 2-month process to frame, we take plans and have a house framed in 2 weeks, which is unprecedented.
Wow. So is this stuff that you're manufacturing the stuff and then shipping it out to the job, or are you bringing it direct, or how does that work?
So it's totally vertically integrated, meaning somebody gives us their plans for a house, track house, custom house, whatever apartment. We take it into our plant and we build the floors, the walls, the trusses, everything inside. And then our team brings it out to the site and then we assemble it. So it's literally turnkey. It takes that big friction point for all these builders around the country. It takes it out of the equation. They can determine they're going to have a house framed and then line up their subs, the electrical and everything literally on a particular day versus hoping it'll be that month that they have a house framed.
Yeah, so this is somewhere between what originated as flat pack homes, and now you're giving back. Still, people are making their own plans, but then using you guys to bring the construction in, right?
Yeah, it's not just like here's one of 5 manufactured houses.
Choose between these 2 models.
No, it's you tell us here, you give us your plans, our CAD engineers take it and convert it, and then we literally in 2 weeks later you're going to have a house that's framed. I mean, that changes the equation, and it saves a ton of money and a lot of stress. I mean, I'm bald because of all the stress in construction, and you know you can really avoid that because of what we've developed.
Yeah, so I would think that with any technology in all industries, are you getting some blowback inside the industry because maybe they assume that you're taking away some jobs, but you're making the process more efficient, which the goal is homeowner is going to get a more efficient product. It's not going to take as long to build.
Well, what's interesting is there's a massive shortage of not only the houses, but the people swinging the hammers. People don't want to go out I mean, we're in Arizona, and in the middle of summer, it's 115 degrees out. Nobody wants to
and
go
it
do
feels
that.
like 140.
Exactly. It's like Abu Dhabi. And so it's, the opportunity is that we're filling a gap. So there's excitement and there's panic because people realize we're completely disrupting. And there's other people saying, when are you coming online so we can order all of our houses and all the framing and get everything, all the missing pieces that we have, they want us to take on. So it's a very interesting thing. People are paying attention. All the multi-billion-dollar builders out in Arizona and nationwide are watching what we're doing, and they're waiting for us to come online. It's very, very exciting.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can be B2B and B2C for consumer, right? Because you start direct to consumer, but obviously some of these bigger companies may need to streamline their process if they want to get developments going, because we're obviously in a housing shortage in America.
Yeah, there's not only the house builders, but the apartment builders. The average apartment, say 100 unit, that takes 10 months to frame up. We're going to do in 2. So 2 months versus 10 completely changes the pro forma, because that's 8 months of wasted time. And that's costs a fortune when you think about 100, 200, 500 unit builds. So yeah, it's a pretty big deal. People are paying attention. We actually just met with the governor a couple of weeks ago and the Commerce Authority, because they were watching and they're all excited about what we're doing. Our second plant, it broke ground. And so we've got 2 that'll cover like 97% of the state of Arizona. So they're pretty excited out here in the desert.
Yeah, well, I mean, these are technological advancements, like you said, that also involve humans. So it's not like we're doing something that's eliminating that. It's just making a more efficient process across the board, which in the end can create more houses quicker.
Yeah, that these 2 plants combined will have direct and indirect jobs, about 3,000 jobs total. About 600 at the actual plant and delivering, and then the indirect jobs that are created from that. So it's a very healthy thing. Like, it's interesting because normally there's somebody that loses in this whole process, but the community wins, the people that want to live here win, the environment wins, the investors win. Like, it's very cool to be part of something where there's no losers, which is really it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, and it's green and eco-friendly. That's what I was thinking in my head. I'm like, where's someone going to try to find the downside? I mean, because everybody's going to want to do that, of course, at some point. But it does seem like it's a real across-the-board benefit, especially when we're in a time where apartments specifically, it's tough to get up a new apartment, but that's what we need. We need rental units because people can't buy. So if you can get them up quicker, they're just more available. And I mean, even in, especially in rural areas, they have the land. So being able to get something up quicker that will help, more activity for a town, that could be huge for a smaller town.
The towns that we were, these 2 locations have completely embraced us, and they're smart. It's interesting, the towns that are around them that are pushing back and saying, we don't want to have any more development. And then they're watching all the jobs we're creating, and these are good paying jobs. And they're thinking, wait a second, we kind of screwed up here. And so we actually love the politicians and the bureaucrats, the people that are helping to support, make this thing happen. Everybody's really cheering it on, which is unusual. Usually there's somebody fighting it. Probably, honestly, the only people that are fighting it are the ones that maybe they have a framing company, or they're supplying the lumber packages, and all of a sudden those packages are gone. Like, we're going to end up being in the middle of it. So I suppose there's probably one party that's been locked in a monopoly for a long time, and they're going to get knocked out of place, which is healthy for everybody.
Yeah, and I think that across the board in a lot of manufacturing industries, those that don't go with the times eventually at some point are going to get left behind, because we have to get advanced. We can't just use the same techniques we were using 80 years ago. It won't work at the same scale.
They sure want to, though, man. People like to keep with what works and what makes them money, but it's not, like, we have to think into the future and innovate. And we're doing that. I think that's the cool part. And one of the fun things is people will say, well, what happens if somebody else does another plant? And I say, if somebody else's does 300 more plants in America, we're still not going to solve the shortage. There is such a shortage. So we're excited. Any innovation, whether it's 3D printing or anything that's out there, it all helps this problem, because we have, and it's interesting, regardless of politics, we've got millions of more people that have entered this country the last couple of years. They're all going to need housing. Yeah. So there is this the shortage got worse in the last 2 years because of all the new people that are here. So we're just happy to be a part of the solution.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, let's go way back. When was the first time that you remember thinking, hey, real estate's something for me?
It's sort of a funny story, because I had an insurance agency in the late 90s, and insurance, I was one of the youngest insurance agents with Farmers Insurance. And I was on track to, be making like take home $1 million or $2 million a year within probably 10 years. And I thought, well, that's just too small, too little. Because I'd read Donald Trump's book back in the 90s, and I said, wow, I got to think bigger.
Want to go big, yeah.
It was really funny. I was like, insurance is for, it's for losers, and it kind of goofy, but that's what triggered it. And I went out and did a seminar and said, this is really great. I want to get into this, and bought my first house on a credit card, which was a really great idea. And I'm saying that completely tongue in cheek. It's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
And it was, what's interesting is that there's no secret hack to doing any of the real estate stuff. It's literally the hack is a 4-letter word called work. Yeah. And I just worked my butt off for a long time and made a lot of money, made millions of dollars buying all these houses. And then I was so full of myself in 2008, I got humbled and lost $25 million and was homeless and had to start over. So I've been through these cycles, and that's an interesting perspective to be in. People told me, man, it's funny, back in the early 2000s, they said, you're going to have to go bankrupt at least 2 or 3 times for us to really even take you serious and for you to understand life and business. And I said, that's so stupid. Why would anybody do that? And then after having lost everything 3 times, I realized what the wisdom and the value of doing it was.
Yeah. So if you go back to 2008, was your biggest mistake just over leveraged?
So there was a whole bunch. I've written books about this. I mean, no joke. It's like all the things I'm like, whoa, I screwed that up and this and that. One of it was over leverage. Part of it was spreading out, not having a niche. It was being all over the place, doing all sorts of things.
Yeah.
It was thinking that, like, not understanding all the things I could be wrong at. Like, I had 7 different projects that were all supposed to net me over $1 million, and I lost over $1 million on each one of them. And so I was completely wrong 100% across the board. So it's making assumptions. And then one of the biggest lessons, and this is for everybody, is to not have people that have been around longer than you, that are older, wiser, that are more seasoned. And I stopped having those people. In the beginning, I had those people because everybody knew more than me. And then I thought, oh, I know plenty.
I know more.
That's when I had my ass handed to me. So it's always great to have people that you respect and trust to tell you what they see, your blind spots, and then to be able to take action and not let your ego get in the way. I did not have that. And when that went away, so did all my money.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really helpful, though, to listeners, because I think 2008 did get a lot of people, but the people who stayed quit in it, they're not coming back to talk about it because it's just too tough. But what was it about going through it that you knew, like, I'm just going to rebuild?
Well, in the middle of it, I was hiding in the corner. Like, Osama bin Laden was hiding in a cave, and I was doing something similar.
You were next to him, yeah.
I was in my own cave, man, hiding from everything because I screwed everything up and let a lot of people down. And I felt terrible, and my self-esteem and confidence were destroyed. So it took years. And that's one of the hard things when you go out there. People don't realize that when you get your butt kicked and you lose a bunch of money, whether it's 100,000 or 100 million, there's still a time frame where you have to go through a process, not just of letting your body heal, but letting your spirit, or your soul, your mind all heal. And it takes time. So that's probably 5 years until I said, okay, what do I want to do here? And it was not real estate. It was like anything but real estate. And eventually real estate showed up in a different way with FrameTec. And it was other stuff, but it was more mission based. It wasn't money based. And the money became a side effect of the mission. And that's a very different approach than 25 years ago when it was all money. Like, how rich can Damion get? That is not what this is anymore. I've gotten far richer in every way today because it was missional. It was focusing on breaking people's financial bondage and doing things that mattered, building things, not just trying to skiff off $1 million here or there or figure out how many points I could peel. It was really doing things that mattered to everybody and not just how much money I could put in my pocket or how much I could consume.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely fits our mission as the mindful approach, because I think when people are using their own mistakes to enhance their own lives and then other people's, it's like you're coming from a point of vulnerability. It's not like, hey, I'm great at everything. Like, I crapped the bed a couple of times. Like, this is kind of just what happens. And 2008 was something that hit people wide. One thing you said was really interesting to me. You were taking on too many varied projects. So you're talking about, like, you're doing flipping and then you're buying apartments and you're buying things where you didn't have real synchronicity between them to be able to do them all well.
Yeah, it sort of reminds me of the franchise magazines where you open the thing up and it's like top 100 franchises you can do. And I was like, I'll take them all. Like, that was my approach to real estate. It wasn't, I'm going to narrowly focus. It was like, I was building apartments. I was apartment condos. I was rehabbing apartments. And these are all in different states. I bought a house up in Maine to flip. It was a $4 million place that you could see George Bush's estate in Kennebunk. and I had houses all over the place. So I was in everything, but I didn't have a team. Like I didn't have a world-class team. So I was the world-class team, which means I was in trouble because I wasn't that good at any of this stuff. And I was all over the place. So that was a huge problem. I see a lot of people doing that, even passively investing in a whole bunch of things, and they really don't know a whole lot about any one of them. And so it's no wonder that they get their butt kicked on things. They go, oh, I never saw that coming. Well, yeah, because you're in everything under the sun. You're not focused. You don't have intelligence inside these things.
Yeah, and I think with that comes like an overtrust, because that's what I see in the syndication space now. There's people who didn't really know the operators. They thought like, well, that looks cool, but they didn't do the due diligence. And for you, you were like, hey, I have all these teams all over, but they're not your team. So you have this like overtrust. I hope they're doing a good job, but that's always how, if you just take it down to one flip, that's how you lose money. You know, you trust the contractors, you know, doing all the weird stuff with subs. And then you're like, I don't know how this happened. How am I behind schedule and losing money on something I was supposed to crush?
You can't even imagine how many things you can learn how to lose money on when you aren't focused. I mean, I remember one of my deals, an apartment complex that I bought, 119 units in West Haven, Memphis. I bought this thing and I put money into it and then ended up losing the property to the bank and all the money went away. And then I got sued for the debt. And I said, how can I be sued for the debt? And it was because the lender came in and opened the bid. It was a $1.2 million loan. He opened the bid at $300,000 and he sued me for the deficiency. And it was a scam because he'd already sold the property to somebody else for 1.4. Yeah. But I didn't realize you could lose more than your money that you put in. That's when I learned about leverage and really learned. And I realized that when you sign on debt, you need to be paid for that in really an equivalent way to putting up cash, because your exposure is every dollar you're signing on. And you know, one of the reasons that I moved out to Arizona, moved back here for it was to be right next to FrameTec. I live 30 minutes from the plant. So I'm right on top of this thing. This is my focus. I'm right in the middle of this. And it's because I learned those lessons. So all the investors now that have invested $150 million in this project, they know that, hey, Damion spent 25 years doing everything wrong. He's literally going to take all of that and he's putting himself right next to this thing, has the best team you can ever imagine. And but that takes time. Like nobody can read a book and get in that position.
Yeah, I think what you said before also was really important about that. It took 5 years for you to crawl out of that hole. And that's like that I think really helps people to think like the people who try to turn it around too quick, like they're not ready. They haven't even processed their mess up yet. You know, they're just like, I'm just move past it and do it again. And then same thing's going to happen.
Well, and this goes to our whole society. Everybody's so impatient. They want everything to get rich quick and nobody wants to do the work. So it's speed and a lack of work. And it's no wonder everybody's getting just demolished. So I always ask people, like, if they want me to invest with them, I say, well, okay, tell me about what you've done and tell me all the dumb things you've done. Yeah. And they're like when people say, oh, I have a perfect track record for the last 7 years or 7 minutes, I go, well, congratulations. After you screwed up, I can hear the people talking to me 25 years ago. I'm like, after you screwed up, come to me and talk to me, because I want you to be humbled and be able to say, look, I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to get help when things go wrong. I'm not going to say I'm the smartest one. And because, I mean, that's what we tend to do. We want to fix things. We don't want to be vulnerable. I'm willing to be vulnerable. I bring in everybody. I know that there's collective power with all the people, and I'm not the smartest one. I'm going to be hyper driven, but all the people coming together is where you can make magic.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a realization that helps you grow in business. But then, you know, the more you grow in life, the more you grow in business. And you're literally an example of this, of what you said, because it's not just doing the work on figuring out what you did wrong, you know, in real estate before. It's putting the pieces together of, wait, where was my ego in this situation? Because when we're all running hot, like we've all been in positions where like our ego was like, I'm the best at this. You know? I'm the best. And then like, boom, a market can take a tumble and just take all of that away and say, wait, okay, I wasn't in control. The market was in control.
And there's a great quote. I don't know who said this, but it's a great quote. And it says, the market can remain irrational longer than you can remain liquid. And you know, people think, well, it should be this way. And I always laugh because I've heard myself saying, well, it should be this way. And it's like, nobody cares. The market doesn't care. Market doesn't have an opinion. Market just does whatever the market wants to do. And you've got to deal with whatever it is. And it's called objective reality. And until you can actually say, okay, let's call it what it is. Let's call it and ask what is true. Until you get there and get rid of your ego, really, you're truly going to have to go through a process of getting crushed. And I think that that's true for everybody. I don't think there's an exception to that.
Yeah. Well, so for listeners, though, how would you suggest someone, you know, prevents getting crushed big? Maybe they get a little bit, but where do you think the biggest mistakes are, especially for people who are newer, who have money, I think those are the most vulnerable. Have money to invest, don't have a lot of time, so they're more trusting to get the money out there and into something.
I think you make a good point, and let me step back for a second. The reason that people are so trusting is because they're so impatient. So you're forced to be trusting because you don't have the time to be patient, to get to know people, to date. Everybody wants to get married and go on the honeymoon and have all the kids
after the first date.
Exactly. And it's like, we all know that that's dumb. It's the same thing in investing. You have to take the time to get to know people. And I think people try to take on too much too quickly. There's a guy named Van Tharp who passed away. He was a friend of mine I used to teach with about 20 years ago. And he's the world's renowned teacher of traders, like people that are investing and really trading in whatever market. I taught with him, and one of the things he taught me was about position sizing. People tend to put way too much X dollars money into something like one thing, and they don't. But then they make the other mistake, and they spread their money out into 1,000 different stocks or something. And you've got to be rational because things do go wrong. And how do you avoid losing your butt? Well, make sure you don't put everything in something you don't understand. If you're going to do it, like Warren Buffett says, look, one egg or one little set of eggs, and then focus on the nest. Like pay attention to it. So how do you really do that? Well, one, you get around people that are genuinely successful and you immerse yourself amongst them. That's called masterminds. It's called mentors.
For sure.
And you, instead of trying to figure this out in a book or something, I mean, people write books to sell books. They don't write books sometimes with all the actual real stuff. They want to sell you a get rich quick. So I think it's being around people and that are going to tell you the truth, and that you can watch how they're doing things and giving yourself time, because I've just seen more people that I had one gal come to me. It was my girlfriend's sister. She said, "Hey, I want to make $5,000 a month." This is like 20 years ago. And I said, "All right, no problem. I mean, I've done that. Like, what do you got to work with?" She said, "I got $50,000. And I said, "Okay, how long are you going to give yourself?" She said, 6 to 12 months max. And I said, "Well, here's what's going to happen. You're going to have a $50,000 seminar. You're going to spend the next 12 months making all sorts of dumb mistakes, and you're going to have no money left and a whole bunch of scars. And then you're going to be like, oh, I'm sort of seasoned, but you're going to be out of money, and you're probably going to go do something else."
Right.
So it's really time and people, and then position sizing are really the keys.
Well, how do you find those people? Because I think now, like when we were both younger, there was no social media, so it was a little easier. You are going to bump into people in person. But now I feel like people are lured by what's out there. And there's people who appear to be really crushing it, but are not. So how do you get in the rooms with the real people that you eventually know you can trust? Or how did you? And then we can take it to everybody else.
Well, I got in a lot of rooms with a lot of people, and I realized that most people are full of shit. And
completely agree.
I mean, that's just reality. People, I remember something felt wrong when I would talk to people, and everybody I talked to, I said, "Well, how's business going? What are you doing?" And they said, "Well, I'm doing like 5 to 10 houses a month." And I said, how many have you done?" "Well, I'm working on my first one." But I was like, so what they did is they said what everybody else was saying and told them to say. And it was basically to fake it until you make it. And so you have to be out there. And then, it's hard because people have masterminds, and some of the people that are doing masterminds charge you $20,000, $30,000, and they're not even doing deals. They're just good at masterminds, or they've done deals and they've lost a lot of money and they have no idea what they're talking about. So I think you just have to be willing to spend time vetting and stumbling around and going to meetups, going online. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do it, and being patient. The problem is if you say, "Okay, I need a mentor right now," the first person that pops up in your Facebook feed, you're like, "Oh, that's my person."
Well,
and it's like,
I mean, the phone's listening to you anyway, so they're going to serve you up with like 8 coaches. We're both going to get them on our phones after this, just because we mentioned that. But I think that's a really good point. I mean, I think that the search will turn up exactly what you want when you want it if you're not paying attention.
When the student's ready, the teacher appears, and algorithms and feeds will. I mean, it appears like you just said in about 2 seconds. You're like, how did it know? Well, that's how it works. And so, being slow and mindful. Everybody's so impatient. There's this huge virus, not called COVID. It's called FOMO, and everybody wants to get involved because they're afraid they're going to miss out. And that's, I remember being in my 20s and wanting to be a billionaire by the time I was 18. I was like, I'll go back in time. This is how this is going to work. And the reality is 25 years later, I'm not a billionaire. I've made a lot of money. I've made a lot of mistakes. And I realize now when somebody comes to me, if they don't have a 5 to 10 year plan, it's not worth my time to even sit there and try to do anything other than say, look, you're screwed. And people are like, well, what do you mean? It's like, The reality is you can do anything in 5 to 10 years if you're willing to give yourself time and do the work. But I think that's one of the biggest problems. Nobody wants to do the work and nobody wants to put the time in.
Yeah, I think if you take two things that you said together, they're short-sighted, so they're willing to spend the money quick instead of spend the time. But like PS, if you can spend the time, you're not wasting any money. So even if it took you a year to find the right mentor, then finding the right mentor would be, the jetpack that you need. But like they're just traditionally impatient because everything's at our fingertips all the time, but it doesn't mean it's going to make money.
Well, and here's another thing along those lines that people don't think about. If you've ever been around at a gym or you hear people talking about a gym and they'll say, my coach, like, I don't want to hire a trainer. And why? Well, I don't know if my trainer knows what they're talking about. And I laugh and I go, all right, that's the same reason you won't hire a coach for real estate or business. And they say, well, what do you mean? They're like, well, what if that person doesn't know what they're talking about? I'm like, the problem isn't the trainer. It's not the coach. It's you. You're not committed. Like if you're not willing to show up and do all the work, then you're setting yourself up with an excuse on why this isn't going to work. But it's not it that's not working. It's you not working. Yeah. I don't care if you have the world's worst coach or trainer. If you go do the work and you stick with it, you're going to surpass all your goals. But I laugh, and I've done the same thing. My coach goes, all right, are you happy with the pictures of your body with your training? And I'm like, no, because there's a package of Oreos that found its way into my house and I ate the whole damn thing. And he's like, well, how do you feel about that? I'm like, well, apparently I'm not as committed as I said. So I need to re-engage my commitment. That's the problem. It's not the coach. It's not the mastermind. It's your level. You will literally do whatever you want to do within a mastermind or a mentorship if you're committed. Like, you'll blast past any possibility that they told you was possible because of your level. It has nothing to do with how smart they are. It has to do with how committed you are.
Yeah, I completely agree. I've always said that the failure in masterminds and coaching programs, even if the coach and mastermind are bullshit, even if that's true, it's always user error. Yeah. It's because the people pay and think the money's going to fall from the sky itself. If you sign up for a $50,000 mastermind and you decide like, wow, that was a real bait and switch, you could still crush it because the material's not going to be fake. They just copied it from someone else. So if you do it, and then also, like we were saying, interact with the people in the mastermind, that's where the magic happens. Just consider you're paying for a different product. But like, if you just do the work, like you said, you're probably going to be fine.
It's funny because along those, when you pay for whatever, the mastermind, the mentoring, like when somebody says to me, well, how much do you charge? And if I want to do one-on-one with people, people generally will have like, they have a seizure when I tell them how much it costs because, and what, it's six figures. And why? Because I don't want to do it. I only want to do it with somebody that's going to launch, that is so committed, because, and I call it the pain price. I'm like, look, if it's not painful for you, then you're not going to go do it. And I don't want to work. I'm not going to waste my time. My time is limited. I don't know. I've got one of my buddies from high school that just got told he's got to go to hospice. He's got 2 months left to live. Like, life is short. Yeah. Like, I'm not screwing around. And if somebody is not going to be fully in, if it's your last $100,000 and you come to me and you say, okay, I'm in, I want to spend a year with you, and you're that committed, I guarantee you're going to make it. I guarantee it. Because you're so, like, there is no other option. When somebody says, well, I'm going to try it for 5 or 10,000, guess what they're going to do in a year? Ask for a refund because they didn't do shit. So I just, like, that's the question. Are you committed? It's not about the program. It has nothing to do with the program. It's about you.
Yeah, I agree. And I've done it myself. I've signed up for things thinking like I'm going to be available. And then I realized like I'm just not available. I signed up for something. It's too much. It's not their fault. It's probably good. I just don't have the time available, or I'm not making the time available because, like you were saying before, I'm not putting the priority on that. We've both learned to look in the mirror and look first, but I think a lot of people do need that lesson. And a lot of them are looking for that shiny pony that's just going to like ride off and do all the work for them and flip the houses. And you don't even need a contractor. Everything just works out great, but that's not how it works. Like you said in the beginning, it takes work. And realistically right now, not a lot of people want to work.
No, I always refer to people as a bunch of drunk squirrels chasing shiny nuts. And it's easy because there's shiny nuts everywhere, and there's so much smoke out there, and it's so, so everybody has a plan. And it's like, I get hammered on social media with all these people saying, I've got this great thing and I can help you with this. And I was like,
all of us do.
Thank you. I appreciate you being out there and committed to hustling. But the reality is, you don't take it. Here's a great tip for everybody. Don't take advice from people that make less money than you. I don't care. Like if they're telling you how you're going to make another $10,000 and you're making $5 or $10 million a year, like what in the world? Why would you listen to them? Just stop.
Yeah.
And that goes to one of the greatest lessons. And I don't know if this was Buffett or somebody, but the difference between successful people and ultra successful people is ultra successful people say no to almost everything. Yeah. You've got to be willing and able and practiced at saying no to damn near everything. Everybody that wants you to suck your time, they want to take your money, they want to sell you a book. When people say I read 100 books, I'm like, yeah, but did you study any of them? They're like, well, I read 100. I'm like, you don't know anything from any of them. I'll read like 5 books and I'll read them like 6 times in a year each. And there's a different thing. It's about going deep. Chet Holmes used to say this before he died. He's like, it's not about going in, he was talking about martial arts and business. He goes, it's not about learning 10,000 different moves and doing them 1 or 2 times each. It's about doing 10 moves 10,000 times.
Perfectly, yeah.
It's exactly what you need to do with whatever you're focused on in real estate. Pick the thing. Doesn't make any damn difference. It can be mini storage. It could be apartments. It could be raw land. Do the one thing and become world class. And there's $1 billion and a huge impact waiting on the other side of it. But if you try to do everything, you're going to bounce off the surface.
Yeah, and it's much easier to charge, like you said, that pain price, which, in Hormozi's book, 100 Million Offers, it says it's a grand slam offer. Like it has to hurt to get someone to be committed enough to make it worth our time. And that's like, that was a really great point by you. But I think that's it. It has to be at a level where it's going to hurt a little bit, or else what's the big deal? If someone just spends $99 for your coaching, of course they're not going to show up. Do you really want that $99? Are you going to spend the time to do it with someone who's checked out? It sucks.
No, the funny part is people argue with you when they're spending $99 or $900 exactly. Or $10,000. They argue and tell you, I'm like looking at people going, what are you arguing with me for? You literally have this moment in time to glean and ask questions. People are so stupid that they have opinions. It's like, you don't even deserve an opinion right now because you have no experience. Yeah. You have an opportunity to ask a question and then run with it. But people don't get that because their egos and their social or whatever, all their brain damage that they have from all of their probably their childhood, that they're damaged from their parents. Like they have reasons why they need to have an opinion. I don't care what your opinion is.
Yeah, but we can't fix that.
Questions. No, yeah. No, but the opportunity to ask questions, that the whole saying that you've got one mouth and 2 ears. There's a reason you've got twice as much on one side and half. It's so that you can listen. So ask questions, shut up, and go do the work.
Yeah, and I think that goes to what we're saying about all these things. The more listening, the better. And then ask just one good question. That will really get you farther. It's like when people want a mentor and they just ask someone like, hey, how do I become a real estate investor? And you're like, bro, I mean, that could go 100 different ways. Instead of saying like, hey, I want a house hack, a 2-family. I've looked in these areas. This is my price point. I really think I can do it, but these are the configurations of the unit. Should I do A or B? Anyone, like a good investor, I'd love to answer that question. You just set it up on a tee for me. Like I can tell you, and then I will tell you why. But those open-ended questions are also lazy. Like we were saying, it's just like, you don't even want to take the work to formulate a good question. You just want me to just go on ChatGPT. I mean, I don't use that thing, but like, if you want the answer, they're going to go on that and trust that. But it's a conglomeration of weird stuff. It doesn't mean it's correct.
Yeah, it is pretty funny. People just want the answer, and they don't want to actually understand it. They just want you to tell them, just what do I do? I have a very close friend that I started getting interested in crypto many years ago, and he was very cool. He would kind of give me a little bit, just enough to where I was totally confused and I'd have to go do work. And he's like, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not going to tell you all the answers. I'll just give you some ideas, and then you have to decide if you're going to run with it. And it was hard. And the reality is I've got a deeper understanding now because he forced the issue. So he was a good friend and a good mentor. Most people either don't want to answer you, or they tell you one thing and then you make a decision. Like I remember buying MILF coin years ago, and that was one of the dumbest things I've ever done. And it was because, you know what? I saw somebody that said, I'm going to make 10,000% in a week. And I made about 2,000% in an hour. And then I lost it all the next day. So it's the shortcuts. There is no hack. You got to do the work.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so let's go back to FrameTec though. So where do you expect this to go? Because it really does seem like it's a burgeoning business that can really help a lot of people. Right now, you guys have 2 plants in Phoenix, but what do you see as the overall scope for the company, and how is it going to help real estate in general?
Well, it solves the framing problem, which is probably it's a core problem, and it's also a waste problem. So we're solving these massive problems with speed and efficiency and the ability to get things done, better quality, and ultimately it's a scalable, franchisable type of model. So these 2 plants that are coming online here in Arizona are the they're the models for the rest of the country. We've got 6 locations that as we head east through Colorado, Texas, North Carolina, Florida, and the Tennessee area, there's 6, which is it's effectively a 50 plant operation. Each location can have 1 to 15 or 20 plants. And ultimately this covers about 70 million people in the population. So that's where the growth trends are. I think this is going to have a huge impact on building and housing in America. And it's going to be really fun to watch and roll out. There's a big vision for this. It's solving a huge problem, and we've got the team and we've got the idea to make it happen.
Hey, it's Jonathan, just taking a brief break from this episode to talk to you about Royal Legal Solutions. I had Scott Royal Smith on episode 92 of the podcast. You can go back and check that one out after you finish this episode. And he opened my eyes to how much protection I was losing every year that I didn't activate, build a team, and protect my assets. You can get information about Royal Legal Solutions by using my link at bit.ly/ZenRoyal. And bit.ly is bit.ly/ZenRoyal. You'll find a lot there. You'll find a 30-minute video to watch with Scott. And I can guarantee you what you hear on the podcast is exactly what you're going to hear in that video. So give it a try. I'm down the rabbit hole right with you. Let's get back to the show. Just take your area, since you probably know that the best. I mean, where's the shortfall in housing there? And I know it's something that you're obviously solving and we've talked about, but what are some other areas that are just like a big holdup in this type of build to rent on the larger scale field?
I mean, I think there's gaps in everything. Like after 2008, we lost about 75% of the supply chain in terms of subs and workers. So everything's having to be rebuilt, but it takes years. And so there's a gap, which is also interesting. Like I think one of the greatest opportunities when people are like, I'm interested in real estate, there's probably a million opportunities. If you look around and start realizing, wow, you cannot get a plumber to do plumbing.
I completely agree. Yeah.
So there's these opportunities everywhere. The gaps it's not like one little gap. It's not just housing or it's not just apartments. It's like all these trades. So there is an unbelievable opportunity if you're willing to spend some time learning and digging in. And it's really not that hard. Just go walk around and ask people, like, what's the biggest problem? They're like, I cannot get somebody to do my HVAC. Yeah. Okay, well, there's a problem and there's an opportunity. It's $1 billion opportunity in every direction in really every state in the country. So I don't care where you live. It's just people, I think, are looking for the turnkey on everything. And the big wealth is not turnkey. There's no like, I'm going to turnkey myself into a gazillionaire. Like you got to go do the thing. And so I like bringing that up because people are constantly saying, well, what is the best place to go? I'm like, it doesn't matter. Just go pick something. You can be successful, whether it's pencils or mini storage or apartments or gelato. Like just be great at it. Either be exactly first or be great, do something.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and if you look at the trades, they're down because they're hard work. But I think trades suffer because they don't know how to run businesses just generally. Obviously, some do, because there's still businesses like right now that will call me and give me a 4-hour window. I'm like, don't you guys have Google Maps? Like, what? Like, you're just dropping stuff off. Don't give me a 4-hour window. I don't have 4 hours. Who can wait around for 4 hours? Like, you can just look at your route and tell me how long it's going to take and give them a break for lunch. It's stupid. And then I feel like they look at it and like, the opportunity for trades right now, plumbing, electrician, is like astronomical. Like we lose our subs all the time. They're like, oh, there's no scale in this. It's because they're not good at running a business. But again, for someone to go into it, they could crush it if they went forward knowing I want to be the best plumber technically, like I want to do the work great, and I want to get people under me to teach them to do the work, and I'm going to run it like a business, which means I'm going to be on time. I'm going to do my job. I'm not going to try to do 12 jobs in a day when I should just do 4 so everybody gets better service. That is a problem across the board with contracting and building. It's like, oh, it'll take 2 months and then it takes 12 months. And you will solve that problem.
One of the things that blows my mind is so many companies forget why they're in business. They're in business for a customer. They're in business to do something to to solve a problem. And like a lot of companies, as they get bigger, all of a sudden they think, oh, I'm here for my employees, or the company exists for the shareholders. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, no.
Your job is to focus on the customers, and that's your number one. And you look at any of those trades, you look at apartments, you look at all these different things. How can you be successful? You literally go ask people, what would make your head explode? And people just start rattling off all the things that they're pissed about or they don't like. It's like, oh, well, shoot, there you go. Just like make people happy. It's not that hard because customer service has died and people don't show up. The only thing worse than your 4-hour window is when you try to get your internet installed and it's an 8-hour window.
Yeah.
It's like ridiculous, and it shouldn't be that way. If UPS and FedEx can figure it out within the minutes, then they can do everything on time every day. Like it's a function of people not being professional and wanting to do things too fast and being lazy.
Yeah, I would actually take that and just pivot it to landlording in general. Landlords who suck are not paying attention to their people who are caretaking their buildings. If you want to find out what's wrong with your building and why it's worth $2 million and not $4 million, go talk to the tenants. They'll tell you that you're not doing anything to make them happy. Your job is to make it happy so they take care of your property better. And it's a slippery slope both ways. So it's like a direct tie to what I think bad landlords are doing. They got behind, they bought at a bad rate. Now they don't want to fix up the apartments. And they're like, oh, I hate my tenants. But they hate you. Like who wants to be in that relationship? That's terrible. That's why I think a lot of people aren't ready to be landlords, because your job is to take care of the tenants so they take care of your asset.
So many people over the years have said, well, real estate's amazing except for the people. And I'm laughing and I was like,
that buy self-storage.
Yeah, buy self-storage or buy land, and just let it sit there. And then, who do you have? You have like deer, and then maybe that's it. But the truth is, if you actually understand the customer and take care of people, that it's not overly complicated to become incredibly wealthy and financially free. You just have to be thoughtful about that and stop trying to take, serve people. And like I've got a rental property, and it was an accidental rental property. I rented a place and ended up moving, and I was like, well, shoot, and I'm not going to default on a lease, so I subbed it out, and I'm treating this person the way that I want to be treated. I'm treating this new person that's renting. When they text me, they get a text back in a few minutes. Like I'm treating them like my best friend, and you know what? They really appreciate that, and they're going to take really good care of this place. And so it's again not hard. It just takes time and energy and presence. And that's one of the things, God almighty, it is hard to get people to be present about anything. They got dings and bings and twits and twats, and like they're like distracted all over the place. So when you can be present with the people that matter in your ecosystem, you will change their life, which will change your life.
Yeah, and I think if you just focus on the customer service, the rest will come. It's going to come a little longer. And like we've said, everyone's short-term friendly, but like all the returns are in year 1 and 2 when all the referrals start coming in. But most people are giving up after 4 months. Oh, they're rude. They didn't buy right away. They didn't get my product. Right. They were going to get it the next day, but then you acted like a jackass. So you lost the sale, which is pretty common. It's like that. There's that like little, it's probably like a New Yorker comic where there's like a person pushing a boulder all the way up to the top. And he's like 1 millimeter from pushing it over and getting all the momentum. And he's like, screw it. This is too much work. Lets it go all the way down, never goes over the mountain, never achieves success.
That's such an unfortunate common thing that happens where people quit. And what they don't realize, there's all this energy that's being built up, and there's a theory. It's called Prigogine's theory of dissipative structure that was developed by Ilya Prigogine at the University of Texas, and it's about energy going into a body. And the greatest example is like a caterpillar. You put all this energy, and then it turns into a butterfly. And once it pops, it's a vibrational frequency thing. Once that happens and the thing pops into a different form, it can never go back. And it's the same thing when you put energy into yourself, like personal development, and then go, not just reading books or going to seminars. And, it's like this whole experience of going to a seminar. You're like, I've transformed because Tony Robbins thumped his chest. It's like, no, you got to go do the work and then you'll transform. But when you go through that process and then you go do the work, like you can't go backwards unless you quit in the middle of the metamorphosis. Once you quit, that's why on my book, Reinvented Life, there's a caterpillar there, reinvented. If you were going to reinvent, you got to put all this energy and pressure on yourself. And I just see people not wanting to do it. They're like, ooh, it's pressure. It's hot. It's sticky. It's terrible. And I'm like, all right, well, you're going to stay 20 years from now. Your life is going to look exactly like it does now. You're just going to be probably fatter and balder. Like that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, but again, it goes back to something else we said. That's a self-awareness thing. People don't want to look at themselves in the mirror, which it's not hard. You'll just get to the next level if you're just honest about it. But the less you are, how can you be successful if you're like bullshitting yourself about yourself? It makes no sense.
That's the biggest problem, quite frankly, is people are lying to themselves, and they don't want, you can't change a lie. Once you own the truth, once you acknowledge the truth, you can change it. And it's like, people all the time, that it's funny how often people's finances are messed up. I was like that for years, where I didn't know what was going on. Well, I was just living in a lie and I didn't want to acknowledge the truth. And then once I realized, oh, this is a mess, and wow, I'm really buried. And then I got I'm buried by $2 million. Got it. Okay. So I can figure out how to solve that. But if I didn't know what it was, you're swinging at that smoke, but you're not going to grab anything. You can't get a hold of it. So once you acknowledge the truth, you can fix it. And that's incredibly empowering.
Yeah, I agree. Well, this has been awesome, man. Let us know where the best place to find you is. And then, of course, the website for FrameTec is frametec.com, but that's FRAMETEC.com if you want to learn more about that. What about you? Where can people find you?
Best place to find me is LinkedIn, and come rap and hang out and see what I'm up to. If you're watching this, you're gonna see Financial Underdogs FU, which is my podcast. So if you want to hear more of my commentary or all of my little anecdotes, that's where you find me. But yeah, look me up on LinkedIn and check out frametec.com and see what we're doing to truly build back America.
Yeah, awesome. And you've written about 12 books as well, right? Just give us a rundown on what those books are about for people who might be interested in those.
Well, I mean, one of them was like how, when you melt down your life, and we all have different stumbles. That Reinvented Life was about that. There's one on retirement accounts, how to use retirement accounts to invest in stuff outside of Wall Street. Got one on gold and silver, which real money. And I wrote one called Unicornomics a few years ago. It's the pivotal first 15%. So in business, if you can get the first 15% right, there's an 85% likelihood of success. Instead of saying, well, most businesses, 90% fail in the first 5 years, and then 90% of those that are successful fail in the next 5. Instead of being one of those statistics, those roadkill, I went and studied this stuff, not just in theory. I wasn't in MIT's media lab or something studying algorithms. I was out in the real world starting 70 plus companies. And so I said, okay, all these lessons, and then studying the academic part with the real world part. This book, it's called a mini book. And when you read it, you realize, wow, these are pretty straightforward things. The funniest thing is when I read my own book, that Unicornomics book, and I'm like, wow, I'm not even doing that. I wrote this. I need to listen to myself.
Can I follow my own path?
It's funny because when we learn something, oftentimes we're like, oh, that worked. Let's never do it again. It's the dumbest thing that people do. And so my job, the reason I write books is because we think we know things in our head. We think that they make sense. And then when you write them down to try to communicate them to another human, you realize how jumbled you are. And you're like, wow, that's my thinking. So it forced me to clarify. And I think a number of people that I've talked to that have written books do the same thing. So if you ever want to really understand something, try teaching it through a book. It's a lot harder than you think.
Yeah. You write a full paragraph and what the hell am I even saying? That's just nonsense.
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, it was a pleasure to have you on the show. I'm glad we got this time to connect.
Yeah, me too. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. That was Damion Lupo. I'm Jonathan Green. We'll see you next episode. Wait, you have reached the end of the show. This is the part where you're going to get ready to check out, but I've actually changed this part. For over 120 episodes, you heard the same thing. Well, now I've changed it. I've thought about doing intros to the next episode, but I'm going to hold off on that for now. These are my pitches at the end. I've got nothing to sell you at all, but I do want to remind you that it really would help us if you support the podcast in the right way. All that means is subscribing to the podcast so you get it on Monday and Thursday, writing us a 5-star review if you believe that we deserve a 5-star review, sharing it with your friends, and being a participant in the Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing community. Soon there's going to be a new website launched. Maybe when you're listening to this, it's already going to be out there. That's where we're going to have collaboration. You're going to be able to see a lot from the guest. It is coming soon, and I just want to tell you, from me to you, I don't know how I got here, over 100 episodes. I'm so appreciative of you listening to the podcast and especially sticking around to hear this part. We'll see you next episode.